Hi, and welcome to this short session on the Math Equity Project. My name is Lee McKenzie, and as part of the Professional Learning and Community Education through UW School of Education place, I'd like to introduce you to the professional development called the Math Equity Project. So our goal today will be to go over a few introductions. What is the Math Equity Project? Some of the math experiences we have there, and then opportunities to connect. So scroll back. So again, my name is Lee McKenzie. I work at Clark Street Community School, and I have been co-facilitating the Math Equity Project for the so last year was our first group, and then we have a cohort this year. Christina Stefanik works at Place at the UW-Madison and has really led the way on this. And then the wonderful part about this is we have had other co-facilitators also helping throughout, including Nicole Louie and Gwyneth Hughes through UW-Madison. So what is the Math Equity Project? So kind of the history of this is that we know that math is an area that has been particularly harmful to many individuals. So whether you look at historically who has been involved with math, ways that math has been taught, and who's been excluded from mathematics, we know that there is a lot of equity issues that are present in the mathematics world. So the Math Equity Project is a year-long course for practicing educators. We meet for 1 week in the summer where this year we'll also be meeting virtually and then monthly throughout the school year for a few hours. Our goal is to have some common learning experiences throughout the summer week, looking at resources for equitable math practices, and also really truly collaborating to think about ways to implement something that is going to change or make action within your school building or school setting. So we focus on these teaching practices, which I'm going to go into more detail in a few minutes. And one of the goals is that we purposely do math together to build a community of learners. So when we began the Math Equity Project, one of our focuses was what are the practices that we want to focus on throughout the project, right? So what experiences do we want to make sure that we are including? So we focus on these practices throughout the week-long session, and then we come back to them throughout the school year to kind of do touch points on, to reflect on, and to look at our own practices. So foster students' mathematics identities as math thinkers and doers. We want all students to believe that they can and do already do math. We want to provide every student with challenges that leverage their strengths while pushing them to grow. So thinking about how do we have some of those low floor, high ceiling tasks that allow students to enter in at different levels while also still showing growth depending on where they are at. We want to promote meaning making through discourse and justification. We spend a lot of time talking about how do our students talk about mathematics. We want to support students to see each other as capable, valuable learning partners. So one of that pieces is creating partnerships with teachers and students, students and students, and students and their families to think about how are they partners in all of this learning. We want to connect students' math learning and doing to their lives through a windows and mirrors approach. So really looking at how do we build autonomy and agency within our mathematics classrooms, which then spreads throughout our schools. And one of the biggest pieces that we continually come back to is noticing and naming racism, sexism, classism, ableism, and other biases, and sitting with that discomfort as we are guided through transformations and are building upon our own learning about our bias. So I'm going to give you a second to read a little bit about, we had crafted some statements about how the Math Equity Project advances justice and social and equity. So I'll give you a minute to read through our statement. So throughout the Math Equity Project, we are consistently centering students in our work and thinking about how does what we do as mathematicians, math educators, or those who are in positions that are supporting math educators, how do we center the student um, to grow as a human being and to grow their mathematical thinking? So some of the ways that we are doing this are through experiencing mathematics ourselves. So in the Math Equity Project, we've had individuals who are teaching everywhere from first graders all the way through post-secondary. And so we enter into a lot of tasks that have access points at all those different levels. So we really encourage teachers to think about, how would your students think through this problem? How do you think through this problem? And how do we bring all of that thinking out loud? So some of the techniques or uh, tasks that we work on are things like data talks. So in this example, this is a data from the New York Times, what's going on in this graph, which is a series on their website, looking at rising global temperatures. So we spend time thinking about, what do you notice? What do you wonder? What impact does this have on you and your community? What might be going on in this graph, and what questions does this bring up? As you can notice, we bold the community question. And the reason is we really want to focus on, how are we bringing mathematics in, not only into students' lives, but extracting it from their lives. What are they experiencing? How can we really be looking at culturally relevant material and encouraging that as a way of learning and understanding mathematics? So the other piece that we really look at is different projects that are specific to local context. So sometimes that locality can literally be a community. Sometimes that locality is maybe a little wider, as in our nation, right? And sometimes that locality is thinking globally, right? And even though, right, it's not local as in right here, right now, but when we think about being human beings on this earth, right, we think about that context into word problems and practices that are being used. We also look at, what are things going on in our community, and how can math be a tool and a lens to understand a solution to whatever social problem might be going on. So as you can see, we also really focus on lots of different resources that we bring to the table. We spend some time thinking about, how are we connecting mathematical modeling and community social issues. So how can you connect with us? So throughout this opportunity, right, you can become part of the Math Equity Project. You can reach out to Christina or myself. Feel free to access the PLACE website, and you'll be able to directly access the Math Equity Project. We have openings for this summer. We would love to see you there. You can also connect with us if you would like to bring a team, or if you'd like to offer something more school or district based, that Christina would be able to help you with any of that. All of these links will be included in some of the documents that you'll get through the Wisconsin Mathematics Council. So if you have any questions, please just send us a quick email. We would love to connect with you. Thank you for joining us for the Math Equity Project.